Hey folks, this is Screen Watching. My name, Dan Barrett, joined here by Simon Foster as always. This is a very special episode of Screen Watching. Will I be dead by the end of it? Maybe. Let's find out. Simon, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Dan. Yes, for those of you who are watching our YouTube feed, Dan has a cracking case of the colds, don't you, mate? You are well sniffly.
Look, I don't know if it's the case that I have a terrible cold right now, or if it's just that after 2.5 years of not getting sick at all because, who's leaving the house?
Yep.
Like maybe it's just hit me like the ton of bricks. I feel like Roger Rabbit, who just suddenly had a, rather unfortunate incident.
2 years worth of public diseases have finally caught up with you, and it's all hitting you all at once. You're still very handsome, though, and you're holding it together pretty well. So let's start the show.
Oh, God, kill me now.
This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher, mother! Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for it.
Look, kids, let me bust out the reality for you. The reality is this. You are listening to Screen Watching. My name's Dan Barrett, joined here by my homeboy, Simon Foster. It doesn't matter how sick I am. The wheels of Screen Watching keep on going because we've got some stuff to talk about this week. I'm going to talk about one of the biggest TV shows of 2022. It's a show called PACHINKO on AppleTV Plus. Yeah, it's really quite something. I'm going to talk about Halo, which has its actual 2-episode premiere this week. Gave a bit of a preview last week, but now I'm going to go through and really rip this thing apart. And then we've got Life After Beth, which is a brand new Disney Plus series starring one Amy Schumer. Now, those are 3 big shows, but Simon Foster, you got a pretty big one there yourself.
Well, thank you, sir. Yeah, I appreciate the call out there. We're going to talk about the new movie X, which is a horror film from the great director Ty West. Turning up on Paramount Plus, there's actually a couple of the Oscar-nominated documentaries. I'll be having a look at one of them called Attica. And of course, the one that everyone's waiting for is the Ben Affleck, Ana de Armas film Deep Water, the one that was bumped from cinemas straight to Amazon here in Australia. And yeah, I get to have a little bit of a chitty chat about that. And I'm looking forward to that one.
Attica.
Yeah, exactly.
Attica.
Well, that's...
It stinks.
Okay, Simon, I need to know. Let's go deep. Let's penetrate into the world of Deep Water with Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas.
Nice try. Ben Affleck has it in his head. He's got it in his head that working with his latest girlfriend is a good career move. So let's have a little bit of a look at his record so far. Now, I know you're a fan of 1997's Chasing Amy. He paired up with Joey Lauren Adams in that one, and it's a pretty good film, but he was still a nobody back then. Then in 2003...
They've got a couple.
Yeah. Then in 2003's Daredevil with Jennifer Garner.
No, Kevin Smith was a couple with Joey Lauren Adams.
Yeah, and Ben was on the scene as well. Ben was absolutely on the scene.
I don't think that's true at all.
I've done my research.
Making things up now.
No, I've definitely done my research.
I know Ben Affleck's dating. He wasn't with Joey.
We'll see. We'll get emails. I'll double check on that one. My sources say that he and Joey were quite the thing. Let's jump to 2003. He was in the Daredevil with Jennifer Garner. He was miscast. She was much better. Also in 2003, the notorious Jilly with Jennifer Lopez, in which 2 massive showbiz egos demanded millions of dollars to do as they wish, driving director Martin Brest mad and leading to one of Hollywood's grandest failed follies. So we get to Deep Water, which is the 4th film starring Ben and his lasse de jeu, the now ex-girlfriend Ana de Armas, who was on a roll of spirited, sexy types when she shot this and No Time to Die a few years back. Both of them were pre-Knives Out, which is a much better vehicle for her talents. Ben plays Vic, the cuckolded husband to Anna's libidinous wife, Melinda. They have an arrangement that allows her to indulge with younger, fitter men than her hulky, surly husband. And she flaunted at every opportunity. Most of the first half of the film is her drunkenly pashing strangers at parties while he watches on, blank-faced and increasingly agitated. Now, there's a dark cloud hanging over. Good for her. Yeah, there's a dark cloud hanging over their upmarket Louisiana suburb. The unsolved murder of a young man, one of many who had been openly intimate, if that's even a thing, with Melinda. Now, everybody kind of thinks Vic did it, but mostly turned the other cheek. Vic doesn't really play it down. In fact, he frightens off Melinda's latest conquest, this blonde doofus played by Brendan Miller, by reminding him he's the #1 suspect in the murder of her last shag. Then the death toll rises. Piano player Jacob Ellaby drowns despite his very well-defined upper chest and arms, and goody two-shoes hunk Finn Wittrock makes the mistake of going for a long drive with Vic. Now, Vic has earned his money as a military drone inventor. He's now a retired millionaire, and this gives the film a streak of irony that never really plays out. See, he tortures himself by watching her, and all the town is watching him while his toys watch the world. In the family mix is the young daughter, Trixie, played by Grace Jenkins, doing a great creepy kid performance, as in, is she in on it with her dad? And to top it all off, Vic has a creepy hothouse out back where he breeds hundreds of snails that may or may not do his murderous bidding for him. Oh boy. Deep Water is the first film in 20 years for British director Adrian Lyne. It's a passion project adaptation of Patricia Highsmith's novel that has gone through umpteen false starts and several studio regimes. He last directed Diane Lane to an Oscar nomination for Unfaithful, and for 2 decades prior, he crafted some of Hollywood's most sexually charged dramas. Foxes in 1980 with Jodie Foster. Then he did Flashdance, 9.5 Weeks, Fatal Attraction, Indecent Proposal, and in 1997 he did Lolita. He was the go-to guy for manipulative relationship dynamics, gender politics, the dark heart of contemporary American marriage, and some very frank sexuality, the likes of which few mainstream directors would covet. So ultimately, Deep Water is this unfocused, occasionally confusing drama which must absolutely irk Adrian Lyne, who would have seen the dramatic potential of the murky morality in Vic and Melinda's life at some point in the project's 20-year journey to the screen. His best films intellectualize the juicy plotting of your average airport novel. Deepwater just feels like an airport novel. It's not without its watchable moments, mostly involving Ben and Ana striving for inclusion in the married co-stars club alongside Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton in their Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf Prime, but they don't get anywhere near that. Deepwater, it's not Razzie terrible, it's just mildly okay, which I think is even more disappointing.
Okay, so a couple of things to unpack, and boy, is there a lot to unpack here.
Oh yeah, there's
well, really just 2 things. So Unfaithful, I know I saw maybe the first third of that movie, but I never saw the end of it.
Okay.
But, you know, I'll tell you more about what goes on at the drive-in stays at the drive-in, Simon. The other thing is Ben and Ana, look, I mean, obviously this is a return to form for the director. These are 2 actors kind of at the peak of their powers and also peak of their relationship sort of hotness. It would be probably remiss of me not to ask a little something about the craft. And so instead I'm going to ask, do we see any bits?
Look, in your words, there's not a lot of pain. There's a bit of pain. There's nothing like He's Gone Girl pain. You know, even certainly by Adrian Lyne standards.
He went the full Affleck in Gone Girl.
Yeah, he really did. He doesn't here. There are some moments where Adrian Lyne leans into the physicality, but it's nowhere near as revealing or shocking or even titillating as he did with 9.5 Weeks and certainly with Unfaithful. Those films always had, even Flashdance, despite its very working class setting, had almost a European feel to the way it handled sexuality and flirting and the dynamics of a relationship. This one is set right in the heart of steamy Louisiana, Middle America, and it can't conjure any kind of eroticism at all. There's a lot of talk going around as to why this was pulled from the cinema release and sent to the streaming channels. There was buzz that it was on Ben Affleck's pleading that he didn't want to see these scenes on screen with his ex-partner. I don't believe any of that. I just don't think it's a film that would have done well in cinemas, that would have even been noticed in cinemas by anything other than critics with sharp knives. So I think sitting at home where you can double screen is exactly the best way to watch Deepwater.
Yeah, I just don't think there's much of a market for erotic thrillers at the cinema anymore. I don't think the audience has the appetite to go and see them in public, but I think at home it's the perfect viewing environment for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is his best work. And, you think of the films of Paul Verhoeven with Basic Instinct and all those films that came in the wake of that movie. They were very much of a time in Hollywood when there wasn't the home viewing platform until after they'd had their cinema run that they enjoy now. So, yeah, it is I don't think it's a dead genre, but it's certainly a genre that's been pushed to the side and isn't a big screen option very much anymore.
Oh, look, it's not a dead genre, but it's a genre that really seems to only operate in streaming. So there was that sort of, the first half of the film was pretty good. It was called Voyeurs, which was an Amazon Prime Video film from early last year.
Yeah.
Had Sydney Sweeney in it that people would know from Euphoria and from White Lotus. Anyway, like that was really fun and cheeky for the first half, and then it kind of just loses its way after a bit. But that's also a genre hallmark.
Yep. So Deepwater is on Amazon Prime as we speak. If you're a Ben Affleck fan, are there really any of those out there? It's worth having a look at. And certainly Ana de Armas, she's sort of she's got all the hallmarks prized by the superficial male. So if you're keen to have a look, check it out.
I am both a superficial male and B, a Ben Affleck fan.
Oh wow, okay. What have you got up next on the calendar?
I want to talk to you about the TV show Pachinko. I'm going to play a little clip there, and then I'm going to come in and say, sorry, there's me just stealing myself. In 2019, I was on my honeymoon, and I found myself staring deep into a cavernous building in Tokyo district Akihabara. It was a pachinko parlor, and I was confused, dazzled, and overwhelmed by the noise and the lights. And that says something considering the general stimulation overload that is Tokyo. In 2022, I was seated on a reclining couch in suburban Brisbane, on a recliner couch with a baby bouncing on my knee. The room was quiet, save for the occasional singing and giggling from the bub. Yes, that's adorable. And the most gorgeous, dazzling TV show streaming on my TV. Again, I was once again transported into the world of Pachinko, but instead of the headache-inducing reality of the gaming parlor, this is instead a breathtaking 8-part TV series. Pachinko tells a multi-generational story of a family across multiple generations, as how's that for terrible writing, with people at different stages in their lives as they grow and move where the winds of life take them. The story begins in a remote poor fishing village in Korea in 1915 with the birth of Sunya. Throughout the first episode, we flash forward seeing her life as a young girl getting caught up in a fairly adult situation that's undoubtedly a major trauma in her life, and by the end of the episode, we're with her as a young woman. But her story is interrupted by stories of her grandson, Solomon, in 1989. He's a smart and scrappy, but very well put together, young vice president working for a bank in Japan. As the world of Pachinko grows in subsequent episodes, we see more of the life of the family throughout the generations as they all enter and pass through each other's stories at different life stages. The show fascinates and delights as we watch the contrast between the two most distant points of this family story. Sunya as a young girl surrounded by the concerns of the Japanese presence in Korea, while we also see her later in life as a much older woman in 1989 in Japan, engaging with her grandson, a successful businessman who's been educated in the West. Visually, the show is incredible. I often remark that Apple TV Plus shows are amongst the most beautiful on TV. This one trumps them all. It dazzles as it takes us through the decades across Korea, Japan, and the US. Perhaps the show's most greatest triumph is its incredible opening title sequence. The best thing Apple TV Plus could do to sell the show is to upload that sequence in high quality to YouTube. A fairly staid, typical opening title sequence that speaks the multi-generational tale told throughout the show gives away midway through it to a heartfelt set of clips with characters from the show dancing in a pachinko hall. It is so filled with life and joy. Your heart will be swelling by the end of the titles alone, and so you understand, the show never lets up with that feeling. Pachinko is one of the most special human dramas brought to the screen, and your heart will be pounding with every episode.
When you filled in the running sheet early this week, you put Pachinko in there at the top. I hadn't heard of it at this point. I didn't. It was completely off my radar. Between when you put the name in there and us recording now, it has been popping up all through my Facebook feed with reviews and opinions from people who've seen it exactly the same at yours. This seems to be a series that is striking a nerve with both audiences and critics around the world. And it has very quickly become one of my must-watch shows of the next few days.
Look, later on, we're going to be talking about the Oscars, and I've got a fairly different viewpoint on the Oscars than you do, I'm going to assume here, and it's probably pretty safe to say. But I look at what they're doing with Pachinko, and I think about the movies I've seen this year that have been Oscar nominated, and I just don't really understand how the Oscars are relevant at this point. Watch Pachinko, it is really just incredible television.
Okay, Apple TV Plus is where you can find it. It's up and running now, obviously, and it's called Pachinko. It sounds like a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. Beautiful in its own way, but also completely disturbing is a Paramount Plus documentary called Attica.
You're probably going to play a clip there.
In upstate New York in 1971, the entire population of Attica Prison took control of the facility and held prison employees hostage to protest the cruel, inhumane treatment they were receiving at the hands of a brutal penal system. The vast majority of prisoners were black or brown. All the correctional officers and administration were white. After 5 days of non-violent negotiation, Governor Nelson Rockefeller and President Nixon's blessing, ordered armed police battalions and sniper units to take back Attica Prison. Of the 43 men who died, 33 were inmates, while 10 were correctional officers and prison employees that had been held hostage. In director Stanley Nelson's retrospective analysis of the event, it becomes very clear race and politics were the underlying concerns of those in charge of solving the Attica Prison standoff. 50 years of memories and muted facts are revisited in interviews with prisoners who survived the killings, the personalities of the incarcerated but educated men who tried to attain basic human rights for the prison population only to be slain where they stood are remembered, and the finger of blame for the murder of 43 men is pointed squarely at those in power who unleashed a tired, angry, well-armed mob upon a courtyard of defenseless men. The stories and images are shocking and violent. Nelson and co-director Tracy Curry refused to skimp on detail, be it in the lead up to the prison uprising, the chronology of events over the 5-day shut-in, or the horrendous slaughter that brought the revolution to an end. Oscar nominated for Best Documentary Feature, Attica further exposes the insidious racial underpinnings of American society and the true worth that politicians then and now place on the value of black and brown lives. Not surprised that this has fallen in amongst the 5 best documentaries of the Oscars this year, because I've got to agree with that.
Attica.
Yeah,
Attica.
which is kind of all that I mean, I knew it was a prison uprising, and from the scene in Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino where he screams it out the front of the bank, I knew of this, but I didn't know the extent of the carnage, and I don't think it's at all been revealed over the years. The power brokers behind the scene that sort of forced their hand on this situation. A lot of the footage comes from inside the jail, how they got the sort of access they got and have managed to find the footage they've found to make this documentary. It would be an amazing story in itself. It's on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, look, yeah, I was going to say, like, I don't think my experience, well, my knowledge of it's really much better than yours was before you went into it. So I'm pretty keen to get this one a gander.
Yeah, for sure. What's up next?
I'm going to talk to you about the new Paramount Plus series. It's called Halo.
Wow.
Playing a clip. Yes, I did a bit of a preview of this last week, but here it is with a full-on review.
I'm keen on this.
This is a series that's been in constant state of being quote unquote in development since 2013, changing hands between countless high-profile showrunners and TV networks and streaming services. Once it finally entered production in 2019, it's taken nearly 2 years to actually get to the screen. And then there's a reported almost $100 million budget for just the first season. To say this show is a highly anticipated curiosity is an understatement. I doubt there's a serious critic working today who wasn't at least curious to know what the show would look like. And so when critics finally did get a gander at it, there was an overwhelming sense of, is that it? And to be fair, they're not entirely wrong in being underwhelmed. Halo, it's set in a distant future. The year is 2552. Humans have spread themselves across the universe, and not all is harmonious politically. Some humans on the planet, Madrigal, have been fighting for independence, but as the show begins, they receive a visit from a third party, the tall, big-ass alien Covenant. An army of Earth's finest, the super soldier Spartans, rock up and defeat said alien Covenant, and they emerge from the wreckage and pile of bodies of casualties. There's just one survivor from the, I guess they're called Madrigalians. Beats me, to be honest, and my attention started drifting by this stage. But during the flight home, the head of the Spartans, Master Chief John 117, which I think may have been a character in Midnight Cowboy, he goes rogue. He realizes there was a plot by the government to kill the lone survivor, a plucky teenage girl, so the two are off on the run together. Immediately, this seems reminiscent of The Mandalorian, with the story of a helmeted soldier looking after a child. One can't help but wonder if the pivot away from that dynamic by the end of the second episode was a last-minute rewrite when it became apparent that the show was going to be standing in the shadow of the highly successful Star Wars series. Now, the problem Halo has isn't that it's underwhelming. That's only really an issue based on your expectations going in. A show should be appreciated for what it is and not what it's anticipated as being. But the problem for the show is that it doesn't feel fresh or innovative in any sense. The show never quite escapes its video game trappings. The battle suits look clunky and uninviting on screen, and sure, that's fine for an interactive shooter, but that doesn't really work on a TV show. And its efforts to give the world of Halo greater texture, with interpersonal tensions and political maneuvering, comes off as third-rate Game of Thrones-style palace intrigue. Ultimately, what the show is left at is feeling a bit generic, with a visual style and plotting structure that seems very much in line with a modern Star Trek TV series like Discovery. And in that context, Halo's the perfect fit on Paramount Plus, complementing its Star Trek library quite nicely. But what it isn't is a broad enough drama that'll interest enough viewers to become a crossover hit. Now, some reviews will brand the show as yet another video game adaptation failure. That's actually really lazy and isn't entirely fair, but at the same time, the show is far from a success. I know it will have its fans. There just won't be as many of them as one might have hoped, considering the pre-release efforts to make the show happen.
Yeah, I must admit, in every passing day, I'm becoming less and less enamored with the thought of sitting down to a full series of Halo adventures. And as we've said previously, that it's been so influential on so many works over the last decade or so since it first came out, that to sit down and watch another version of Halo that just happens to be Halo is a hurdle to overcome for many of us. So I'm certain to check it out. I'm keen to see what sort of backstory it had in going from what was to be a Peter Jackson big budget Hollywood blockbuster to a multi-part narrative arc on the small screen. But I guess such is the way of many of these big blockbuster films. The bucks aren't there for them to spend on a roll of the dice at the cinema.
Here's the thing. I don't think Peter Jackson was ever attached to this, but also so many people have been attached to this in so many different forms and incarnations that if that is true, it's entirely possible. I'm not dismissing it because pretty much everybody has had their hands on this in one way or another.
Yeah, I thought the Weta Digital people did a bit of the work. Well, they certainly did at some point. There was material out there that showed them doing design work early on. So, but as you say, this has been everywhere.
Maybe Weta was involved. Who really knows?
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, Simon, let's roll on. I could talk about Halo. Actually, I don't want to talk about Halo again, to be completely honest. Like, it's not that it's terrible either. Like, it's just, like, it is what it is, and there'll be an audience for it, and I just don't think I'm entirely it.
Cool. Fair enough. Well, you'll be an audience for this one. It's called X. Sex and violence, Daniel. It's why people listen to screen watching. It's why director Ty West has a cult classic in the making with his latest film, X, a 70s set shocker that riffs on two of the biggest and most influential films of the decade, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I know one of your favorites, Deep Throat. Martin Henderson plays hotshot porn producer. He plays a hotshot porn producer, Wayne, who, basking in the financial glow of the genre's boom period, has decided to take a small troupe of performers on location deep in the Texas heartland to shoot his historical opus, The Farmer's Daughter. Along for the riding is A-list talent Bobby Lynn, played by Brittany Snow, woodsman Jackson, Kid Cutie, sexed up starlet Maxine, the lovely Mia Goth, avant-garde cameraman RJ, played by Owen Campbell. He's hoping to lend his contribution to the French New Wave movement, and RJ's girlfriend, the timid but blossoming Lorraine, Jenna Ortega. How they all end up at a Civil War era homestead on the property of crusty old-timer Howard and his decrepit wife Pearl is explained away somewhat perfunctorily. We spoke on the phone on Tuesday, Wayne reminds the gun-toting farmer, and barely in the front door, the performers are getting it on for the cameras. Now, this don't sit too good with Howard and the missus, clearly two flyover state conservative types. Wayne forgot to mention the whole hardcore sex film shoot aspect of the visit, and soon the killing starts. It's a cracking outline for a slasher pick, first of all, one that both pays homage to the genre's DNA and sets West up to explore key elements in a very contemporary film language. The writer-director, who has made some of my favorite fright movies in recent times, like The Innkeepers and The Sacrament, explores some obvious beats with an inquisitive, really thoughtful approach to character. Pearl, for example, longs for her younger days as a dancer and pines for a husband who still wants to touch her. And then at one point, the director just hits reset on his film with a beautiful scene in which Brittany Snow sings Fleetwood Mac's 1975 hit Landslide. Now, horror film conventions like the final girl trope are really subverted, while the standard, if you have sex, you die first rule is hard to convene to if everyone is having sex. It's a slow burn build-up, another one of West's strengths, and when the splatter is finally unleashed, it packs even more of a punch than you'd expect. Another big plus is the craftsmanship that West and his DOP, Elliot Rocket, bring to the film, which effortlessly switches between big, beautiful widescreen images of the Texan landscape, all shot in New Zealand, no less, to convincingly rendered 16mm porn footage. So this is really shaping up as one of my favorite films of the year. It delivers as both a terrific character piece and a great slasher movie as well.
Yeah, look, I'm keen to give it a gander. I'm interested in all things Ty West, so
Yeah.
I might give this a look. Just in terms of follow-up from something we were discussing in the podcast, I'm going to say 3 or 4 weeks ago, I made a very offhanded remark about Deep Throat. We should be doing some sort of special edition talking about Deep Throat in the same way we did the Batman.
Yeah, I remember that,
think
as
that was
do
the
many of
context.
the listeners.
I don't. Yeah. And like, I was joking about it. And then I said something about surely there's an anniversary or something coming up soon. Anyway, later on that day, I was listening back to the podcast after I'd done an edit, and I looked it up, and this year's the 50th anniversary of Deep Throat. So
Wow.
maybe we should do something about it.
Sure. What are you suggesting? You mean talk about it, right?
Maybe. Yeah, sure.
Oh,
Hey,
sure.
Simon, let's move on and talk about Life After Beth. Probably going to play some sort of a clip, and then I'd come in and say, tell me if you've heard this one before. The premise of the TV show has a woman in her 30s with a dead-end job and dead-end boyfriend, chucking it all in to return to her hometown where she comes to who she really is and what she wants from life. The new Amy Schumer comedy, Life and Beth, is treading some pretty well-trod ground at this point, both from the premise of the series through to the lo-fi vibe of the show. Your enjoyment of Life and Beth will be predicated on how much you, person who has seen this premise play out hundreds of times before across film and TV throughout your entire life of watching, is willing to take yet another run at this sort of show. And that's not a criticism. Some people like this sort of a show. And one could almost happily call the premise a genre at this point. There's been that many of them. Your enjoyment of the show will also vary depending on your willingness to spend 10 episodes with Amy Schumer. Putting my Schumer cards on the table, I was a big fan of Amy Schumer's sketch comedy series Inside Amy Schumer. I thought it was great laugh out loud sketch comedy, which had some really great pointed sketches. But the third and final season of that I thought was a bit of a dud. It felt undercooked, likely a result of Schumer having blown up and her attention pulled in competing directions. Since then, I haven't really connected much with anything that she's done. Trainwreck, her first feature, fell victim to director Judd Apatow's inability to be savage during editing. And I don't mind the films that he writes directs being bloated, but it really hurt Trainwreck and the recent Pete Davidson star of The King of Staten Island. But with Life and Beth, Schumer plays the titular Beth, a woman who's trapped by a world of her making. She's in an ill-suited relationship with an extrovert wine salesman that she also works with. His flash mob marriage proposal in the second episode doesn't go down as well as he may have envisioned, and she has a domineering mother who isn't able to get out of her own way, let alone out of her daughter's way when she's needed to. Now, when the mother dies unexpectedly, Beth returns home to Long Island to live near her sister for a couple of weeks while she battles memories of humiliations of years gone by, while also starting a relationship with an on-the-spectrum farmer played by Michael Cera. The show really works well when playing off the eccentric and or stuck in their regional Long Island ways characters, but when Schumer's left to carry the emotional heft on screen and convey a sense of internal struggle, the show tends to feel a little bit flat. You get the sense that Schumer took a lot of the storytelling from the screen away from her experience working with Judd Apatow, as the show has a very similar vibe to his work of being inspired by real-world experience as his films tend to do. And to lean into that, recently Schumer did marry a real on-the-spectrum farmer, so the Michael Cera business all feels very real and close to Schumer's interests. Now, it isn't fair to call the show for the fans only, as there is an audience for the show that extends beyond those with the pre-existing fondness for Schumer, but the show never quite fizzes as much as it needs to, despite the occasional moment of inspired, relatable comedy.
I think you're spot on. We watched the first few episodes of this. I, too, am an Amy Schumer fan from her stand-up comedy and from her early comedy shows. I, too, think the ship has sailed on her big screen career. I hated Trainwreck and thought her follow-up films were, very middle of the road. I think with Life After Beth, she has trouble punching through with her own personality. This does, as you say, feel a bit generic. It feels particularly generic when compared to Somebody Somewhere, which is the other HBO Max show, which is on at the moment, starring Bridget Everett, and she is fantastic in that, but it is almost a mirror image of many of the plot points of that show, just transferred from Kansas to Long Island. If we haven't really talked about
considering that Bridget Everett's mainstream sort of cut through was through an episode of Inside Amy Schumer.
Yeah, exactly right. And we haven't really really spoken about Somebody Somewhere on the podcast, but it is a household favorite here, and she is terrific. And I thought and I think the Amy Schumer show Life After Beth suffers terribly in comparison to it. They even cast the actor whose name I don't remember and wish I could, Murray Hill, is in both shows, and it clearly is not a good idea to draw one comparison to the other based on that casting. So look, I think this is a tepid film that enlivened with me when Michael Cera came on screen as the farmhand, but I don't know, we're sort of umming and ahhing if we continue with this.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the fact that maybe Amy Schumer isn't a good enough actor to really be able to carry what she needs to here. And that's not really a slight on her. Like, there's moments where she makes it work for her. So there's this great sequence where they're at a nightclub, and sort of midway through the evening, and Amy Schumer's just like, this place sucks. Let's maybe go somewhere that's a bit more us. And then suddenly it just cuts to them at like a discount clothing outlet store, and they're all having a great time there. And like moments like that is where the show really just finds an authentic voice and starts singing on the screen. But when she's actually trying to emote, like, man, the show struggles.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a bit of a backward step for Amy Schumer in my books. But like I say, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Okay, so
if you want to watch it, it is on Disney Plus. There's 10 episodes.
On the Disney Plus. Very quickly, also in cinemas this week, we have Nowhere Special. This is a British film with James, I forgot his name, James Norden, I think it is. I can't quite remember. He plays a young man who devotes his life to raising his 4-year-old son, Michael, but he only has a few months to live, and he has to spend a lot of those days looking for a new family to adopt the young boy while protecting him from the terrible reality of what's coming. I read that and I couldn't watch this film. I'm not in any kind of mood to have a big sob at a movie like this. By all accounts, it's very good, but maybe I'll get around to seeing it when it's on the small screen. I will not wait for the small screen to watch River. It is the new documentary from Jennifer Peterham, who had a huge hit with Bo Sherpa a couple of years ago. She was BAFTA nominated for that, and for the documentary Mountain. River takes a look at the river systems of the world, mankind's influence upon them, how they're struggling to recover, all set to the music of the Australian Chamber Orchestra, the narration of Willem Dafoe. This is very much a big screen experience, looks stunning, and it's in limited release now.
There's a new segment we've been dropping into the podcast recently, Simon, which is what else have you been watching?
Oh, Dan.
So what have you been watching, Simon?
Okay, so in between boring sessions of the most boring Test cricket series in history, Australia versus Pakistan, I was skimming around the channels and found the Alec Baldwin-led game show Match Game, which is a reworking. Actually, it's not even that much of a reworking. It's almost an exact copy of the old blankety blanks format, which has done the rounds across the world since television began. Match Game has 3 celebrities in the top row, 3 celebrities in the bottom row, and Alec Baldwin in the middle with a funny looking microphone riffing on his contestants. What I found most surprising about this is that it's very blue, and doing a bit of research, I realized it was a late night game show in the US, which allowed people like Jack McBrayer and Joel McHale and Rob Hubel and any number of comedians, many of whom I would not expect to appear on a game show like this, like Hassan Minaj. One of the Duplass brothers, Mark Duplass, has done an appearance on this, but they work pretty blue, and it's actually quite funny, and it's often at the expense of the doofus contestants. So got to say, Match Game's a little bit of a binge thing for me at the moment. It's certainly more interesting than Australia versus Pakistan in the cricket.
Yeah, worth noting, he doesn't murder anyone.
So
that's
too soon.
That's worth considering. What I really like about it is it's very much the visual aesthetics of the show is made to look like it's a 1970s game show, even to the point where Alec Baldwin's walking around with one of those microphones on a stick.
It's so strange. The first thing I said was what's with the microphone, and it's been around since 2016. But from whatever I could find, it only came to Foxtel's Arena show like early last year. So that may or may not be true, but that's the only information I could find. So it's called Match Game. It's up and down your Foxtel dial as we speak.
Yeah.
What have you been
I don't
watching?
think they're making that show anymore.
No, I don't think they are either.
So, yeah, I mentioned this as part of the podcast. I mean, they're certainly not making it now.
No, they're not.
No, America's not ready to laugh with Alec Baldwin right now.
I should point out.
I mentioned this on the podcast.
Yeah, go on.
No, please. No, please, go on.
Only because IMDb showed that the last episode of the series was made in July last year. So I would say that Match Game may have had its final chuckle.
Yeah. I mean, common sense also says it's had its last chuckle. But anyway, let us move on. Because I am currently living with the folks for a little while, I found myself subject to some of their household viewing choices, and apparently my father watches every episode of The Chase. So The Chase is a game show that comes from the UK. I think it's a terrible format. I think it's absolute garbage. And then there's also an Australian version, which was hosted by the Dead Behind the Eyes. Oh gosh, what was that guy's name?
Andrew O'Keefe.
Andrew O'Keefe, yeah. Who I interviewed once, and he was just dead behind the eyes. But anyway, I probably would have.
Oh, got a freeze. Can you hear me?
Simon, he was hosting the Australian one for a while. He ended up being booted off it, and Larry Emder took over as hosting. And the Australian one also just as terrible as the UK one. I think that's terrible format. But there's a US one that was released recently. There's 2 seasons of that, with a 3rd season starting in the coming weeks. And what I've got on that one is all the chases. So the premise of the game is that you've got people playing, they're answering general trivia, but they have to play it against someone who is like a big brain trivia person. So there's like 4 or 5 like people that they call the chasers. And so everyday people are up against like these big brain trivia people. In the US, the big brain trivia guys are all former contestants from Jeopardy. And like they're all the greatest of all time contestants on Jeopardy. So, you know, it's essentially the 4 or 5 big players that you can think of. They're also really funny. They're really engaging. And the show took the time to actually think about what worked about the British version, I guess subsequently the Australian version, and what didn't work. And they cut out a whole bunch of the nonsense. And the US one's actually really, really good. All the dumb format things. So the most egregious format problem with it is the whole idea is that you've got one of these big brain trivia people coming out, the chaser, and you don't know who it's going to be every week. So you've got your 3 or 4 contestants on the stage, and there's like a surprise as to who the chaser is going to be. But for some reason, they repeat the sequence of them coming out of the shadows to reveal themselves, even though it's the same person that has just been on stage like 5 minutes beforehand with the other person. So you know who it's going to be, but then they take up like a minute and a half of time and then walking out of the smoke and shadows. And it's like, well, why are you doing this? That's ridiculous. And then they do these moments where like the person who's competing has to work out whether they're going to take a dollar offer that's been given to them by the chaser, if they're going to lowball the offer themselves or whatever. So they turn back to the panelists behind them saying, what do you think? And then one by one, they all give a terribly rehearsed, like terrible line that's been fed to them by the writers saying, well, if you're going to do this, and then it becomes like, it's just horribly played out. They cut out all that crap in the US. It's just about the trivia, and it works so much better. I had a blast with it. Also, unlike the Chase UK in Australia, which is on every day throughout the afternoons, this is just a primetime show, 8 episodes a year, which means I don't get bored of it. Also, it's some real serious money. I watched an episode where they were playing for like $350,000, and that's more than the £20,000 or whatever you get in the UK version. It's only more than you get in the Australian version. And like it was genuinely exciting TV to the point that I haven't been that excited watching TV maybe ever. Like it was such an incredible like sequence on TV. But anyway, US Chase, amazing. The rest of the Chase.
I will speak in defense of the UK Chase, if only because of the host Bradley Walsh. No, the host Bradley Walsh has a terrible habit of breaking in the middle of a recording. If you go to YouTube and just Google Bradley Walsh losing it, there is a whole series of clips, because over in the UK version, the guys who write the questions put trick answers and funny answers in the multiple choice question. Hashtag Fanny Schmeller is the German, there's a question about who is Fanny Schmeller, and he just loses it at the name of that. If you Google Bradley Walsh losing it on YouTube, you will have a good laugh. But I agree, it's a largely unwatchable game show, but I will check out the American one based on your ahoy hoy. That was the game show segment of What Else Have You Been Watching? Who would have thought?
I find it fascinating you think I'm actually going to go and watch the YouTube videos. It's kind of like you've sat there being tortured. How about you go now and spend some moments with your torturer as they break down like laughing midway through on YouTube? Like, why would I want to put myself through that?
No, I want you to put yourself through that.
It's a very special time of the year, Simon. The birds are out singing, the bees are having sex with the birds or something. I don't know how it works.
Yep.
But Also, the Oscars are taking place, which is where Simon puts on his tuxedo, comes out to shine, and I look at my tuxedo sitting in the wardrobe thinking, I used to have need for you. I used to. But Simon, we're going to talk about the Oscars coming up in a couple of days' time. We're going to talk about predictions. We're going to talk about trends, analysis, that garbage.
All that
You
sort
want
of
to lead
stuff.
into this one?
This is my special night of the year. I'm not going to let your grumble bum antics towards the Oscars get in my way of just glowing and feeling the love for my film brethren all over the world. It's the 94th Academy Awards ceremony. It's happening Sunday night in LA, but you'll be able to watch it here Monday the 28th from 11 a.m. on 7 and on the 7 Plus streaming service nationally. Coming from the Dolby Theatre Hollywood in the Hollywood and Highlands Centre, the aforementioned Amy Schumer will be joined by hostesses Regina Hall and Wanda Sykes. The presenters are just lined up, thick on the floor. Our man Kevin Costner is going to present, Jake Gyllenhaal, Jason Momoa, Tiffany Haddish, Catwoman herself, Zoe Kravitz is going to be there, Lady Gaga, Bill Murray, Uma Thurman and John Travolta are getting back together after their Pulp Fiction success just recently, and they'll be presenting as well. The nominated songs will be performed by the likes of Beyonce. She'll be singing the song Be Alive from King Richard, the songs from Encanto by Sebastian Yatra. My favorite, Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas from No Time to Die will be performing. Reba McEntire will be singing from a Little Sing film called 4 Good Days. Unfortunately, Van Morrison from the film Belfast won't be there to sing his Oscar-nominated song. So there'll be 4 performers on the night. So it's going to be a big variety spectacular. I should point out that all those kind of admirable awards, they've already been presented to the likes of Samuel L. Jackson, writer-director Elaine May, actress Liv Ullmann. They've all been given honorary Oscars in January, and actor Danny Glover was presented with the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award. So all that's been taken care of. Let's get down to the nominations. Who's going to win? Now, I don't know if you have a dog in the fight.
Wait. Before we get to that business,
yeah.
I find it interesting that you also missed out. You seem to focus more on the people that you'd be excited to see on the stage during presenting, but you didn't mention that we're also going to see Tony Hawk, Kelly Slater, and Shaun White on stage presenting Oscars.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's
what
amazing.
nonsense is that?
That is a grab for the younger audience. That is a grab for to make it relevant to kids nowadays, because all the kids love Kelly Slater and Tony. I can't keep a straight face, but it's true. They do.
I mean, sure, maybe 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, but you got Lily James in there. The kids love her from Pam and Tommy, and Rachel Zegler in there. She didn't have a ticket 2 days ago, and now she's presenting at the Oscars. She's the lead actress from A West Side Story.
Also, can I just put it out there? Nor should she have.
I am not going to let you rag on my segment. This is the Oscars, Dan. Let's love it up. So, where do you want to start? Let's go with the big 5 categories, and let's see if we can sort of nail which ones are going to be the winners this time around. Let's count it down from Best Original Screenplay. Now, I think you're going to be happy with what I have to say. With only 3 nominations in the mix, I think that one of your favorite films, Licorice Pizza, is going to take the Best Original Screenplay. Thoughts?
When I think about all the films that are nominated this year across the various categories for all sorts of things, like Licorice Pizza is really the only film that I'm genuinely super excited about.
Good. Okay. Well, I think that's where it's going to win. I think there's a lot of quality work in there, and I think that Best Adapted Screenplay is going to go to Coda, which is really firming as the homestretch favorite in a couple of the categories this year. I think Coda will win Best Supporting Actor for Troy Kotsur. He's up against a strong bunch of actors as well, but he has won a whole swathe of performance awards in the week leading up, and I'm just stretching here to get the Oscar ballot 2020. Get the momentum into the award season. So Troy Kotsur, Best Supporting Actress. You got a dog in this fight?
I don't care.
You don't care. Well, I think Ariana DeBose, who's in the role that Rita Moreno won in West Side Story all those years ago when she won Best Supporting Actress. I think for me, this is going to be the one of the stories of the night, that she wins the Supporting Actress Award in the same category. Ariana DeBose has won a whole lot of awards leading into this. And although she's up against the likes of Judi Dench for Belfast and Kirsten Dunst for Power of the Dog, I'm going to say it here. I think Power of the Dog is going to be the one that sort of comes up short in some of the big categories. I think there's a little bit of a swing against that film, and people are looking for a more joyous film to give the awards to, which will be Coda this year. Can our man in black, Will Smith, win the Best Actor award?
Look, he won't. I think he's genuinely very good in King Richard, but he won't get the award.
What do you think it's going to go to? You've got Javier Bardem, Benedict Cumberbatch, Andrew Garfield for Tick, Tick, Boom, Will Smith, there's Will Smith, and Denzel for Tragedy of Macbeth.
It'll go to Cumberbatch for his cowboy movie.
I don't think so. No, I don't think that's.
I think it will.
All right, that one's on the table. You heard it here, folks. There's, I think Will Smith has won a whole swathe of awards going into this. It'll certainly be a body of work awards. He's very well liked in Hollywood. Cumberbatch already has one on the table, and it's a tough performance in Power of Dog. Certainly a fine acting performance, but I can't see it happening. Jessica Chastain for Best Actress, I think is the short odds favourite. 6 months ago, I might have said Kristen, what's her name? Kristen Stewart for Spencer. But the film hasn't had any love in the award season. Only her performance has, and that can be a damaging thing. Have you seen the Jessica Chastain role?
Yeah, so I thought she was incredible in that. So like that film I thought was legitimately great and mostly overlooked here in the Academy Awards. It certainly won't go to Nicole Kidman, who I think was just outright terrible in Being the Ricardos. She was badly cast. It didn't really make any sense.
There's a lot of late mail on Penelope Cruz for Parallel Mothers, but I think Chastain's got a couple of nominations under her belt already. I think her time's come for Eyes of Tammy Faye, which wasn't a big cinema release, but has found some love on the streaming platforms, and I think we'll see her carry the award home. Now, I think Jane Campion will win Best Director, despite some controversy of late and despite there being a little bit of a swing against the film. I think so dominant has been her run into the Academy Awards that I think she's got the Best Director trophy lined up. Can you see that changing at all?
Look, I mean, I haven't seen the film, so I mean, I can't really sort of speak with any sort of, clarity. But I could certainly say that she's not Paul Thomas Anderson, who I think should have won for Licorice Pizza, and also she's not the director of Drive My Car, which I think is an exceptional film that will be largely overlooked at the Academy Awards.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Drive My Car will sort of fall between the cracks a little bit. In fact, in my best foreign film or international film award, I'm going to go with my heart and say that The Worst Person in the World gets it over Drive My Car and Flee, the animated documentary, which is nominated in a few categories. Now, for Best Picture, maybe 6 weeks ago, everyone was saying Power of the Dog. I'm going to go with the film that 6 months ago I named as my best movie of 2021, and that was Coda. Just in the last few weeks, it's won top honours at the Writers Guild Awards, at the Producers Guild Awards. It has a huge sort of flow of goodwill in its favour. Maybe people are looking for just a feel-good film, which is not meant to be any kind of detraction from it. I think it's a beautifully crafted movie, and I think it will take the top film honour. Do you have a dog in the fight?
It should be Licorice Pizza. It should be Drive My Car. I'd even take a Dune. The rest of the films I got no interest.
Yeah, look, I think June's going to win a couple of the technical awards. I think it's everybody's third or fourth choice in the major categories. Probably costume design as well, although that could go to Cruella. But yeah, I think it's going to be.
The thing with June is that Denis Villeneuve directed the crap out of that film. Like, he did such an impressive job bringing that film to the screen. It's an unfilmable movie that he somehow made work on the screen. And you look at the actual craft involved in that compared to the craft of pretty much anything else, even my beloved Licorice Pizza with PTA. Like, I don't understand how Villeneuve isn't considered just the outright favorite for any of this. But because it's a genre movie, it's just not going to get a look in.
I will say that I think they might do a Lord of the Rings with Dune and give him all the top honors after the second chapter has concluded and give it to a sort of a body of work award. That could happen. I've actually got Dune down for best visual effects. I've got Australia's Greg Fraser down for Dune cinematography. I think that's going to win there, and probably best sound as well. So I think it's going to do well across all the technical awards, and maybe Denis will get the love from the Academy for part 2. But I think it's going to be Coda's year, and that is my tip for the Oscars.
Sure. I mean, I look at the Academy Awards and none of it makes sense to me anymore. So my level of enthusiasm is just dipped out entirely. And last year's Oscars did not do any favors with winning me back to being interested in Oscar presentations.
I am not going to indulge you, your rant. This is my evening. This is my night. I'm going to love my Oscars, and I always have, and I always will. And I'll be tuning in live at 11 a.m. on Monday, the 28th of March on Channel 7 or the 7 Plus nationally.
Look, I will be polite and I won't send you any texts at all throughout Monday.
I leave my phone off.
That's fine. I'm not going to send you a text anyway. Whatever, Simon. Simon Foster. Usually we take a look at the week ahead. Coming up this week is the Academy Awards. But if you want to watch something entertaining, how about Moon Knight, which is there on Disney Plus?
What's the buzz? Do we know anything about Moon Knight that we should get excited about?
Okay. So Moon Knight is a Marvel character that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most important thing to really realize here. Now, what people do care about is the fact that Oscar Isaac's in this.
Yes.
And people are excited about watching Oscar Isaac in a Marvel thing.
Yeah.
Ethan Hawke plays the villain in this. And frankly, I'm excited to see Ethan Hawke as the villain in a Marvel property. I think that'll be fun. Yeah. I am excited by the directors that are on board for this. Like, do you know who's directing this, Simon?
No, not off the top of my head, but I'm not a Marvel guy. I didn't know of Moon Knight before Disney Plus started making all this noise about it. Yes, I'm excited for Oscar.
No, nobody did.
Yeah. So look, I'm
nobody knew.
I'll check it out. Hawke and what's his name? Oscar Isaac together is kind of a big deal. So yeah, I'll check it out, but it's going to have to be something fairly special to pull it in for me. What other new and returning series do we have on the calendar?
Oh, sorry. We never got to who's directing, because this is actually the interesting part.
All right, who's directing?
Yeah. So there's a gentleman that I'm not familiar with, but he directed Cairo 678, which I understand is a fairly well-regarded film. And that gentleman's name is Mohammed Diab. So he's a, well-regarded art house cinema. But the two guys that I'm interested in, the dual join him directing the other two episodes of the season, Benson and Aaron Moorhead.
Oh, well, that's a big deal.
A bunch of my favorite sort of weirdo sci-fi films from the last couple of years.
Yes, Synchronic and Spring, and was it The Endless? I think was the other one they did, or something like that. But there was some.
The Endless.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's quality. They've got some good names to attach to it, which is what Disney are doing with the Marvel stuff. They're putting these indie-minded filmmakers behind their big projects, to hoping to give them a point of difference across the board. So yeah, look, I'm certainly keen to check it out. There's a lot of good pedigree there.
Yeah, look, it's going to be weird and interesting.
It is going to be weird and interesting. Some movies debuting on streaming as we head into the week ahead. A couple of fairly big names. Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood. This is one of Richard Linklater's rotoscoped films, in which he takes real footage, shot footage, and puts the color tint over them, puts the rotoscoping on screen. And this one is a recollection of his own childhoods from the summer of 1969. It looks at the first moon landing, but also looks at what it was like to be a kid watching that, living in the suburbs of Houston and following it as it was happening just down the road. This only played at South by Southwest a little while back, early this year, and it's already headed for the Netflix platform on April 1. Also on April 1 is the aforementioned Judd Apatow with The Bubble. This is about a group of actors stuck inside a pandemic bubble trying to complete a film. Big name cast: Benedict Cumberbatch, there he is again, Pedro Pascal, Karen Gillan, Kate McKinnon, the list goes on. The Bubble had a very funny trailer drop on Netflix a little while back. It's on April 1 on the streaming service.
Yeah, look, pretty keen to give that a look. Just getting back to Apollo 10.5, which I'm super excited by.
Yeah, me too.
You said it only played at South by Southwest a few weeks ago before going to streaming. Keep in mind, this is made for Netflix. Like, it's, it was lucky to be given a South by Southwest screening. Like, that's just a promotional thing.
Well, I think Linklater's got a long history with South by Southwest. Most of his films have launched there, and it's in his backyard. So yeah, that was one for the fans of Linklater and the festival because of their long history. But yeah, it was. You're right. It was. I think it was commissioned by Netflix, and will get all its love on the platform. I actually went after it from the Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival, only to find that it was a Netflix premiere in a few days' time. So missed out there. Special screening.
Yeah, I think you're going to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, there's a special event screening of a movie that I only saw for the first time a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, really? Well, it's worth having a look at this one. This one was on
Simon,
the
you're frozen.
Oh, I've frozen. Yeah, you've gone a bit freezy too. Can you hear me or see me? I'll keep talking. The Studio Canal, Warner Brothers, and American Zoetrope are releasing a 4K restoration of The Outsiders. It's the complete novel from Academy Award-winning director Francis Ford Coppola. This brand new version has an 11-minute introduction by the director, as well as new music, several scenes cut from the theatrical version, which were reconstructed from the original camera negatives. This is going to look beautiful on the big screen. This is a film that actually passed me by in the original theatrical release of the film all those years ago, back in '83. And I was able to see this on the viewing platform HBO Max just recently, and it is a stunning recreation of the film, of the much-loved book. S.E. Hinton's book is clearly a favourite. How are we going, Dan? Are you back with us?
Oh, look, I'm still here, but the internet is not my friend. But Simon Foster, The Outsiders book, I think is very good, but the movie I just thought was, it is what it is. Shall we move on and take a look at this? Yeah, can we move on and take a look at this week in history?
Let's do that. March 25, 2019, Apple introduces a new TV streaming platform called AppleTV Plus. See, that's only 3 years old. I thought it was much longer than that.
Yeah, it's fresh out of its toddler diapers and on it goes. March 26, 2005, Doctor Who returned to the BBC after 16 years with Christopher Eccleston as the aforementioned Doctor. Surname is not Who. There's a bit of trivia for you kids.
Really?
He was the Ninth Doctor and Billy Piper. Really?
I didn't know that.
His name is the Doctor. It's not Doctor Who. Anyway, March 27, 2000. It's a kid's show. March 27, 2005, we had the premiere of one Grey's Anatomy, played by one Shonda Rhimes, that debuted on the US ABC. And March 29, 1993, actress Elizabeth Taylor, I've heard of her before. She was on The Simpsons. She was presented with the Jean Hirschholz Humanitarian Award for her AIDS and HIV activism at the 65th Academy Awards.
No, not happy birthday. No, not that. Please, no, not happy birthday.
It's a special Oscar edition of birthdays this week on March 25th, 1921. The beautiful Simone Signore, she won Best Actress in 1960 for Room at the Top. She was born in Wiesbaden, Germany. Born March 26, 1934, Alan Arkin, Best Supporting Actor in 2007 for Little Miss Sunshine. He was born. Our man Quentin Tarantino was born March 27, 1963. He won the Best Original Screenplay for Pulp Fiction. He co-wrote that with Roger Avery. And then he won again for Django Unchained in 2013. That was a surprise. I don't think that's his best film. March 28, 1948, Diane Wiest. She's won 2 Oscars for Best Supporting Actress for 2 Woody Allen films, Hannah and Her Sisters and Bullets Over Broadway. And my man, Warren Beatty, March 30, 1937 was born. He won Best Director for one of my all-time favorite films, Reds, and he also got the Irving J. Thalberg Award in 2000. So happy birthday, all you Oscar winners. Pat yourself on the back.
So you're going to tell me one of your favorite movies, Dick Tracy.
It is.
This has been Screen Watching. My name is Dan Barrett. You can find me on Twitter at the Dan Barrett. You can start your day with my free newsletter. It's called Always Be Watching at alwaysbewatching.com. It's got the big stories in TV, streaming, and film. And there's other stuff, but I've got a tired voice now. Simon, what have you got?
You can read all my words over at screen-space.net. Visit the Screen Watching Facebook page at Screen Watching Podcast. Check out the Screen Watching YouTube channel where there's all sorts of uncut interviews, including one with River director Jennifer Peedham. That'll be live as soon as this goes to air. And you can follow Screen Watching via your favorite podcast app. Load it up now and hit the follow button.
Okay, follow Screen Watching. You said that. That's good. I don't need to say it now. Okay, Simon, I'm prepared to go off and die. It's been a pleasure. We'll be back next week with more Screen Watching. Well, you will be. I don't know about me.
I'll be
Bye.
back.